if you like the channel, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/MundaneMat. Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is $3 Theater, and this is my review, my what I think of Marvel's 17th feature-length film, Thor Ragnarok. Now, this movie is set to absolutely dominate the box office this weekend, something that a Thor film has never, ever been able to say. They've done pretty well. Both Thor 1 in 2011 and Thor the Dark World in 2014 were both entertaining entries into the MCU. However, this is the first time that I've gone to a Marvel film and walked out going, yeah, I'm starting to feel 17 movies. Mostly because this movie is entertaining, don't get me wrong, but it did not blow my socks off in almost any way. And I am utterly concerned with that, to be perfectly honest with you. So I have watched the trailers, which I think was probably my first problem, was that I watched the previews. The previews, while not showcasing every funny thing about the movie, showcase a lot of the scenes where funny things occur, as well as the type of humor you're going to see throughout all of it. And that is probably my biggest complaint here. Thor is not meant to be a comedy. An action-adventure with comedy elements, absolutely. Something they could have definitely improved more upon with Thor the Dark World. But this movie, like, it stops in its tracks in order to tell you a joke. And that does not help the movie. As funny as those jokes were, in retrospect, cut them. Just cut them or rearrange them or make them work. Now, people out there are going to disagree with me on this one. And I don't want you to think that me coming off with my criticisms right off the bat as saying that the movie was not entertaining. It was. It was a serviceable entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was definitely a Thor movie, and that's good. I enjoy the Thor movies. I'm looking forward to this thing, ending up in my home video collection. I'm going to buy the Blu-ray, have it right on the shelf next to everything else. But this still is a movie that, well, I think Marvel realized when they wanted to do Thor in 2011, when they were prepping for that, they never really had a set plan for the character. And as a result of that, they've kind of, well, shoehorned their way through it, and they've improved each and every time. But you can see that they still, even right now, don't know what to do with the character when he's on his own. Hence why the Hulk had to show up here. So if you've seen the trailer for the movie, you know what's going on, right? Hela comes back, takes over Asgard. Hulk, is a champion of Sakaar for the Grand Master, essentially pulling a bit from the Planet Hulk storyline. And Thor ends up on this planet and is, brought to be a contender in the Grand Master's games, and ends up, with the help of the Hulk and Valkyrie and Loki, going back to Asgard and kicking the crap out of Hela. That's really about it. The thing to remember, and by the way, this whole thing will have spoilers, so that should be, and that's already in the title of the video, so that's something to consider. The thing with Hela being his sister I thought was interesting, but we needed more build up to it. We needed it to be a cliffhanger at the end of Thor the Dark World, not have the cliffhanger tie into Guardians of the Galaxy with the Collector, albeit that was cool, but at the same time was, not something, I know they probably weren't prepping to make this the character when that was the when they were making that movie 3 years ago. I don't think they were planning on Hela. But at the same time, this should have been something that was talked about, that was leading up to. We knew at the end of The Dark World that Loki had done something with Odin and had taken over Asgard. What was interesting, though, was that between 2015's Avengers Age of Ultron and now, apparently Thor had not gone back to Asgard. That over the course of the past 2 years, he had been hunting down the Infinity Stones. He tells you this in the opening segments of the movie, where he essentially does, the whole record scratch freeze frame. Hi, this is me. You're probably wondering how I ended up here meme. Like, that's what he did. He starts the movie like that, which when that happened, I'm all like, oh no, this is going to be doing that kind of thing. And yeah, the humor goes in those kind of places sometimes. And it's just like, they were trying to make it a comedy. Chris Hemsworth is a funny guy. Taika Waititi can do ad-libbed humor very well, very off-the-cuff humor, which I think for what they were going for here ultimately works. but I don't feel that Taika Waititi was in fact the best director for the job. My suggestion after this to him would be don't ever do this again. Mostly because it's not the kind of movie that I think he wants to make. I think he made it his own. But when he says he doesn't want to direct a Star Wars movie, yeah, no. Listen to him on that one. Just don't let him do it. But when he's talking to, he mentions the Infinity Stones, and then that's it. And then there's another mention when Hela takes over Asgard. They go into the to the vault, because he's got there's the Infinity Gauntlet in there, and this time it's a lot more prominent, a lot larger. She pushes it over. She's like, "Oh, this one's a fake. Most of everything in here is a fake, right? But everything else that they show isn't a fake." That's the other thing with that too, is they show the Tesseract. We know the Tesseract isn't a fake. They show Sator's helmet and the Eternal Flame, essentially bringing about Ragnarok. I found that to be a gigantic plot hole. So they have the Eternal Flame in the vault. They go and they put Sator's helmet inside the vault, right next to the Eternal Flame, where anyone just could have walked over, like, I wonder what this would look like on fire, and then brought about the destruction of Asgard. It's one of those plot holes where you're just like, this is where they're setting up the third act. This is where they're setting up the climax. This is what they're trying to do. Oh boy, like you could see it all coming. And that was my problem with this movie. It was predictable. That was also my problem again with with looking at this film and the overall guise of the MCU. It's predictable. The best way I can describe it is Stranger Things Season 2 had a very similar complaint made to me after I gushed about loving that one. Someone's like, there was never anything at stake. You already know that there's going to be 2 more seasons. You already know they're not going to kill off any of the main cast. So there's nothing emotional tying you to it. There's nothing that's going to make you fear for the safety of these characters because you already know. And in the case of Thor, we already know he's going to be in Avengers Infinity War. We've already seen the leaked footage coming out of Comic-Con, right? So we already know exactly what happens post the end of Thor Ragnarok. So when it gets to the end of the movie and it ends, I'm just like, oh, I already know what's going to happen next. And as soon as the first trailer drops, which will probably be here at the release of Star Wars next month, is going to be that. So again, ultimately, like the storyline of Hela being, Odin's oldest daughter, that was pretty cool. Them going on a conquest of the 9 realms, and then somehow Odin growing a conscience. And when that happened, it's entirely possible that he grew a conscience right around the same time he found Loki, and ended up banishing her. But we don't ever really see how he banished her, right? We just know that he banished her, but she killed all the Valkyries in the process. So we don't really know how they got her. We don't really know where she's been. We don't know any of those things. We just know that when Odin died, by the way, which was just an extremely unemotional scene. I was actually really disappointed at that. Again, trying to bring in a comedic director to do a scene where there's supposed to be emotion between a dying father and his 2 sons, a father with his own regrets over how he's, I guess you could say, raised his sons, over his own decisions, what's going to come next, so on and so forth. And there was very, very little emotion in that scene. I was actually really disappointed in that because this is a character that we've known since 2011. And it's been, 6 years, and his death was just kind of, oh, I'm just going to dissipate in the wind, while we're on the cliffs of Norway looking out over the ocean. Like, that's it. That's essentially it. And then Hela shows up, destroys Mjolnir, casts off the 2 of them, and then takes off into Asgard and messes it all up. Then you got Scourge's character, played by Karl Urban. Oh, by the way, Cate Blanchett did do a great job. I will fully say that. But Karl Urban's character, Scourge, the Executioner, I probably feel was like the best new addition, albeit a short addition to the franchise, because he just wanted to be a hero, I think. It didn't really matter who it was. He wanted recognition. And so when offered the role of being the Executioner, he took it. Probably not thinking he would ever actually have to do anything, because she kills everyone anyway. And he was never given the opportunity to really test himself to her as an Executioner. And in the end, he ends up turning his guns on her and then just dies instantaneously. And you're just like, all right, well, that was cool. He realized he wanted to protect his people. Sure, he died in the process, saved people. It did that. And again, it was kind of like, okay, we know he's a one-off. We know Hela's a one-off. Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie was very good. Her being kind of like the boozy, drunked up former Valkyrie who's running from her own problems. She did pretty well. She played it a little bit over the top at first, and that actually was probably my biggest complaint with like the first half of the film. everyone was playing it over the top. And it just felt forced. A lot of the jokes, a lot of the dialogue felt forced. I will say though, I loved Matt Damon's cameo appearance as kind of an Asgardian traveling actor playing Loki in the death scene from Thor: The Dark World. That was pretty cool, and I like that it was Loki as Odin who put that whole thing on as a way to very much pay homage to himself, try to change the crowd's opinion of Loki, and that part was good. And then of course his discovery by Thor was equally as good. And then going to New York to try to find him, and him being in a Shady Acres nursing home that's being torn down. And then here comes Doctor Strange, right? Doctor Strange with an obvious reference to Sherlock, which I thought was just like, leaves behind a business card and it's 177A whatever street and it's not 221B Baker Street. It's like, okay, we get it. He was in Sherlock. Again, hitting these notes that just don't need to be hit. And then with him as Doctor Strange in the costume felt out of whack. Everything, like, it felt very clean in there. And then again, the scene with him and the constant, kind of morphing from one place to another. And then just a quick cuts. And then Chris Hemsworth, like, falling on something or falling down, trying to struggle to hold his beer, was just kind of like, okay, get to the point. And that was a big problem with this. Like I said, it stopped kind of dead in its tracks every once in a while to tell you these jokes instead of just relying on the humor. Now, there was, again, a lot of humor that was there. Probably one of the best bits was when he gets to the jail cell before the fight in Sakaar, and Sakaar, and he ends up meeting Korgan, basically Ben Grimm but blue, and also voiced by, I forget who voices him, but the guy who played Murray in Flight of the Conchords. I think that was him. New Zealand actor, very funny. And he had some great lines, but again, it was kind of like they'd cut to him and he'd have these like throwaway lines that were funny, but also just kind of stopped the scene dead in their tracks. Like at the very end, it was meant to be this final joke of the movie where they're getting away, like, oh, where should we go? And he looks over at one of these bugs that, was with him in the games that had become like a revolutionary fighter. And he goes, oh, where are you from? And he's like, oh, him? Yeah, he's dead. I stepped on him earlier. I felt really bad. I've just been carrying his body around all day. Like, oh, like, okay. It's just like, and then he wakes up, oh, hey, you're alive. Oh, what was the question again? Like, it was just kind of, yeah, okay. Like, yeah, all right. Don't get me wrong. I love juvenile humor, but I just felt like this was, it was so trying to set up jokes instead of letting them play out naturally. And again, that was why I felt probably pretty much most of the movie was ad-libbed, which in a franchise like this, you don't want it ad-libbed. In a franchise like this, you want it like on the ball. You want it homogenized. You want it, each one can differ from another, but this was such a vast departure from the norm that it just felt out of place. Maybe, and that's again probably what they're going for, because we know that post Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is going to bookend Phase 4 or Phase 3. And that's going to kick off Phase 4 after that, which is going to take us to the cosmos for the most part of the next 10 years. So they're clearly trying to introduce the audiences to these, CG fests, to these extravagant locations that are all done in front of a green screen. And I get it, and it works out just fine. Tom Hiddleston as Loki, I thought did a good job. Serviceable as Loki, again, as always, good character to see. But he wasn't as biting as he was. He wasn't as cynical as he was. I know he was trying to find his place, and that was part of his story. But at the same time, it didn't have the same feel to Loki. Mark Ruffalo as Hulk and Bruce Banner was great. It was clearly what they were playing up more than Thor himself was the Hulk. And that didn't disappoint, period. Their fight scene was pretty great. Thor getting his power, the lightning through him and then using it to defeat him. And then the Grandmaster, cheating on behalf of Hulk in order to maintain the victory. I thought was pretty good too. But again, it was kind of like, okay, just, move the plot. The movie was 2 hours and 10 minutes. It probably could have been about a solid hour 45, and I think would have been a lot tighter of a movie. It did feel like it went on a bit too long, and that probably was because they wanted to facilitate the jokes. Now, granted, Kevin Feige is a producer, is a guy who's done this now for 9 years, produced 17 films, all of them have been hits relatively, and this one doesn't appear to be anything other than that. Again, my complaints about it, and I feel like I'm a little bit more complaining about it than I should be, have nothing to do with the merits of the film. Visually stunning, the cast was great, the story was good. The jokes, like I said, were a bit forced, but by the back end of the film, the back half of the movie, you're involved. Like, the back half is really good. I really enjoyed everything with that. Idris Elba as Heimdall, once again, got a bit more screen time. Definitely bring us more Heimdall. Let's see. The Jeff Goldblum as a Grandmaster was fantastic. He was having fun with it. You could tell he was having fun with it. So I like that quite a bit. And then, again, you had, like, the post-credit scenes tying into the next movie, which was Thanos' ship pops up. Right, so we know that's what's going to tie into the trailer for Avengers Infinity War. And then the final post-credit scene, which I thought was going to tie into Black Panther, was actually just another scene with the Collector, which was funny. But again, didn't necessarily need to be there. It was just more of those scenes that just didn't need to be there. And I think that's the biggest complaint that I have. So I'm not going to sit there and say don't see this movie. If you are a Marvel Cinematic Universe fan, as I am, if you are a fan of the Thor movies, as I am, this is one that you definitely want to go see. It's worth your time, and it's absolutely worth your money. I think this is an experiment that I'm hoping Marvel will learn from in terms of mixing comedy with action and story. It's a pyramid that is very hard to get right. And I think they shot for the moon. They got 3/4 of the way there. And then they had a little bit of trouble kind of bringing it home. But at the end of it, it was a lot of fun, and I do recommend it. Those are just my thoughts on the damn thing. And I know I've spent about 17 minutes now complaining, and I feel bad about that. There was barely any mention of Jane Foster or anything involving her. They mentioned the Avengers by name a couple times. They mentioned a couple things here, a couple things there, but nothing really ever to tie into the larger plot outside of the mention of the Infinity Stones at the very beginning. And that again was that is a misstep on their part. When you are leading into 2 parts of this grand finale to bring home your franchise, to bring home this first 10 years of your franchise, and you keep forgetting, or at least purposefully not putting in elements that are going to tie it to that and having it all play like it's a natural convergence, then it starts to feel like you're just making movies to make movies, tying it to a larger narrative, but with having trouble kind of keeping it in line. Like I said, this was the first Marvel Cinematic Universe movie that feels to me like they're showing their age a little bit. Not to say that it can't be revitalized and rebirthed for the next, for phase 4 and what's going to happen then. And I feel also in part that the emotions and the themes that James Gunn tackled in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 took it to not only an emotionally deeper level, but made for a great film. Out of all 3 Marvel films that have come out this year, clearly Guardians was the best one. I might have said before that Spider-Man was my favorite. Upon rewatching Guardians, no, Guardians is definitely my favorite because the emotions were there. The emotions were definitely high. There was actual things at stake, and they really brought their A game to it. As a result, the subsequent 2 movies that have come out this year have not done that. Not to the extent of which they could have. Spider-Man, I get, it's an origin, but this is the 3rd Thor. There was clearly elements at play in terms of a narrative, and a couple of them. And I feel like they just kind of overlooked a lot of it to bookend Thor's trilogy. So then he'll be available to be in the next 2 Avengers movies, and that's going to be it. But anyway, those are my thoughts, my long, over-exaggerated thoughts on the film. I want to know what you guys think about it. Let me know in the comments below. My name is, of course, Matt Jarbo. This has been $3 Theater. I will talk to you guys later. Have yourself a great day, and peace out.